universal basic income is an income paid for by the state to every resident, independently of their resources, their family or work situation, or their availability to work.
First of all, basic income is strictly individual, which means that the right to the basic income is independent of the family situation. Two, it is what's commonly called universal, which means that it is paid upfront, ex ante, no questions asked, to everyone, rich or poor. And thirdly, it is also what you could call obligation-free.
Es incondicional, simplemente ser ciudadano, ciudadana, es decir, estamos hablando de una cantidad que, dicho con otras palabras, recibiría absolutamente toda la población donde estuviera implantada la renta básica.
Entonces es una renta que es incondicionada a otro tipo de rentas, es incondicionada a la riqueza que esa persona pueda tener antes de recibir la renta básica o incluso después de recibirla.
En una asignación monetaria a todas las personas por el hecho de haber nacido. Además es universal porque queremos que sea un derecho que sirva para que todas las personas cubran sus necesidades básicas.
A few years ago, this proposal was almost unknown, but now everyone's talking about it. Referendums are being organised, the media are covering it, important institutions are recommending its consideration, and many parties are discussing it.
Certainly from the last year, there has been more written and said and discussed about basic income just in 1 year than in the whole of history of mankind before.
I think it was definitely, like a little over a year ago, not many people were talking about it.
In the United States, there is definitely a boom of the idea.
The situation is changing. Before 1 year ago, no one knows about basic income.
But where has this idea come from? Centuries ago, many authors spoke about giving a minimum income to everyone. It was a right and not a question of charity, and that right was based on the common ownership of natural resources like land and public goods.
Recently, we still discover very old people, forgotten people who had come up with that same idea, like Thomas Paine. English, revolutionary, but practically forgotten until the basic income movement rediscovered it. He published at the end of the 18th century a little pamphlet that said, well, we are all equally the owners of the earth, of land, and so the value of land should be shared equally between all. Said repeatedly in that little pamphlet, this is a matter of justice and not of charity. And so the first formulation of a real basic income for a whole society, for a whole country, was made in a book published in 1848 in Brussels by someone called Joseph Charlier. And he defended the territorial dividend. It was basically the same idea as Spain. In case of a basic income, best way to see it is that in fact past technological development, past capital accumulation have created a rent. We inherit from the past, from past generations, a wealth that is distributed in the current generation in a very unequal way.
In the 20th century, we can find several authors who proposed at different times and in different places the idea of an unconditional income sufficient for everyone to be able to live.
Now, one of the answers, it seems to me, is a guaranteed annual income, a guaranteed minimum income for all people and for all families of our country. It seems to me...
Let's go back to 1970, when 80% of Americans were for a basic income. Advocates included Martin Luther King Jr., Milton Friedman, John Kenneth Galbraith, church groups, labor unions, 1,200 economists, and President Nixon himself.
I'd also say, too, that in the U.S., as far as this goes, we actually almost passed a version of this under Nixon. Back in 1969, he proposed something called the Family Assistance Plan, that it had passed the House of Representatives and that it didn't get through our Senate. But if it had, it would have been signed by the president and gone into law. And here the U.S. would have been the first country in the world to guarantee an income.
But there is an example of basic income already happening in America. The Alaska Permanent Fund was created in 1976 from revenue generated from state land. The fund recognizes each Alaskan as a co-owner of these natural resources, and it pays all residents a dividend between $1,000 and $2,000 a year. It's widely popular, and Alaska is among the most equal of U.S. states, with the lowest rates of poverty and the highest well-being index scores.
In our recent history, the technological revolution hasn't stopped accelerating, and social structures and behaviours are becoming outdated. Such is the case of employment. The automation of repetitive tasks that robots and computers can do with increasing efficiency is also leaving more and more people out of work.
The people who have the sort of skills that are very widely spread in the world, or the sort of skills that are made obsolete, that are no longer useful given the technological change, these people see their earning power reduced to very little, and indeed to a level that is below the poverty threshold.
Y además, un empleo tampoco es garantía de una vida digna o de una existencia libre. La política económica reciente, reformas laborales incluidas, supone un ataque a las condiciones de trabajo y de vida de la mayoría y provoca cada vez más y más precariedad. Como consecuencia, se multiplican los despidos y el número de trabajadores pobres crece sin parar.
Siguen habiendo unas bolsas de pobreza muy grandes y la ocupación ya nos da para solucionar esto, ¿no? Incluso ahora que estamos creando empleo a unos ritmos pues más o menos altos, ¿no? Lo que vemos es que hay muchos trabajadores que se están quedando atrás, ¿no? Tenemos entre un 12 y un 14% de trabajadores pobres a los cuales no les alcanza ni siquiera pues trabajando para salir de la pobreza.
It's like a game of musical chairs. And since we depend on employment to stay out of poverty, it's like playing musical chairs over hot coals. Traditional 40-hour-week, full-time jobs are becoming scarce. Meanwhile, technology is removing chairs from the game. Cars can already drive themselves. But it's not just taxi and truck drivers who should be worried. It's fast food workers, retail associates, farmers, lawyers, writers, accountants, doctors, even animators like me. All sorts of jobs can now be done in part or entirely by machines. No matter how educated we get, at some point we can't compete with their speed or cost.
With the automation of work, if estimates are correct as far as in 20 years that we're going to have half as much employment as we do now.
In this situation, the right of every human being, just because they exist, to be able to cover their needs is proposed. This right has already been considered in the United Nations Charter, signed by 160 countries. But the issue is when that aspiration will turn into an effective and real right.
So Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that everyone has got the right to housing, to food, to medical care, clothing, all the basics that we need, which, in the world as we are today, we should not be lacking it. Nobody should be lacking it.
In Europe, in the 70s and 80s, various initiatives and focuses of the basic income appeared widely until they converged into the BN network, a network of academics and activists that later on turned into a global network.
And one of the most beautiful things about BN, our network, is that when we set it up, a small group, in 1986, we began a journey. We did not know that. And over the years, we have made many, many friends. And I know that I can go to numerous countries, many countries now, and meet friends.
But we make basic income become global movement. I think it starts from Asia first, because it's most place desperate and inhuman, and then human rights never be care and then respect begin with.
Studies and discussions on variations of the universal basic income are taking place in parties across practically the entire political spectrum. Some parties have incorporated the universal basic income into their programmes, and others are debating it, without there being unanimity within their ranks.
So I'm vice chair of the political party in Germany at the moment, and our aim is to have the established political parties talk about basic income and have a broad discussion in the public, but also in politics. What we've seen is that many people are interested. More than half of the German population is in favor of basic income, but politicians like to not address the topic at all.
So currently in Taiwan, I try to do national proposal. We want our government know it's feasible, affordable. We got those numbers figured out. We want to let all the people know, all the citizens in Taiwan realize that it's affordable, it's possible.
In June 2016, in Switzerland, a referendum on the universal basic income was held. The proposal didn't pass, but it was supported by 23% of voters, constituting a considerable rise in favour. And what is sure is that it was an important leap in raising awareness of the idea.
And this is a conversation that is growing worldwide, and there's actually a feedback mechanism going on. So let's say Switzerland is a good example. And so the fact that a country was voting on basic income for its citizens really kind of excited the world. People going, what are they doing? What is this idea? I've never heard of this before. And oh my gosh, what would that do?
The proposal is advancing around the world, and there are many examples of experiences and activism on every continent.
My name is Elizabeth Rhodes. I am the research director for the Basic Income Project at Y Combinator Research, based in Oakland, California. Well, we don't have any results yet because we're really just starting. I think defining what success means in this context is difficult. We're looking for improvements in health or mental health and subjective well-being.
What we're looking at now is local level experimenting, by which I don't mean pilots as such, but actual areas of public administration, municipalities taking it into their own hands to experiment with providing income security unconditionally on a different basis. So I see the future or the next steps very much in terms of local democratic experiments.
Esto es un proyecto financiado en parte por la Unión Europea y en parte por el propio Ayuntamiento de Barcelona. Vamos a cambiar la asistencia paternalista, caritativa de los sistemas de ayudas sociales que hay en nuestro país, básicamente las rentas mínimas garantizadas, etcétera, que tienen una serie de problemas, y vamos a cambiarlo por un derecho. Esta hipótesis es que cuando tú le garantizas a la gente una cobertura a sus necesidades básicas y no le pones ninguna condición, pues la gente ni es idiota ni la gente es una egoísta que solo piensa en vaguear, ¿no?
My name is Rena Masuyama. I am a Japanese filmmaker, and I make a movie about basic income. And drama part story is this. First pilot basic income pilot project is start in Japan, a small city, and one single mother and the daughter, the family's life is changed. And in that city, many persons' life is a little bit changed with basic income.
And the experiments that we've done in India, for example, we gave 6,000 people a basic income for 18 months. And one of the most beautiful findings was the emancipatory effect for women and the disabled. If you imagine yourself in a family or a community and you are disabled, you tend to get pushed to the end of the queue for food, for medicine, for things. But if you have your own basic income, you can be a person in your own right, in your community, and you'll be getting your part.
It would be something like $1,000 a month, and let us live with dignity, regardless of work status. It would reduce stress and insecurity, and give us the time to focus on work that has more purpose and meaning. It'd be like a secure floor over the hot coals.
I've actually crowdfunded my own basic income. So since January of 2016, I've been living with a basic income of $1,000 per month. I understand that's a good idea because I live with it, and I feel the effects of it, and I know that it works. And I think people entirely underestimate what this idea is capable of.
En un principio es muy fácil hacer demagogia contra la renta básica. Vamos a mantener a vagos, vamos a ser inundados por inmigrantes, nadie va a querer trabajar. La gente que no conoce la propuesta pues puede quedar convencida por estos supuestos argumentos. Pero al cabo de un cierto tiempo, si conocen algo más, es interesante ver cómo esta misma gente se informa más, y cuanto más se informa, más a favor está de la renta básica, lo cual yo creo que es de las cosas más esperanzadoras que tenemos.
Looking back in history, starting from the 16th century, different systems of government assistance appear that start to compete with religious institutions that, until then, were the ones taking care of administering charity.
The oldest model of social protection was born at the beginning of the 16th century. It was, in a way, you could say, a form of guaranteed minimum income, but very conditional. It was given to the poor. Of course, it was not strictly individual. It took the household situation into account. And it was also very conditional in the sense that people only got this income if they were available for work.
At the end of the 18th century, and in order to avoid the French Revolution spreading, a system of subsistence income was organised in the United Kingdom to alleviate famine. Similarly, and at the end of the 19th century, in Bismarck's Germany, the rise of the workers' movement drove the creation of a social security system, a form of solidarity between employees.
This is a very different model. No longer charity to the poor, it's solidarity among the workers. The forms of minimum income schemes we have today is a form of social assistance. That was the first model, so very conditional, a form of public charity to the poor.
Conditional incomes are usually targeted to families in precarious situations that have fallen outside the scope of social security coverage. But they have certain problems.
Tú tienes que demostrar a la administración que no tienes recursos suficientes para subsistir y la administración te va a dar un dinero por ello. En Euskadi, el 20,6% de las personas están viviendo en riesgo de pobreza o exclusión social, aún teniendo la renta mínima garantizada más generosa de todo el Estado durante más de 27 años.
There's beginning a recognition that the patchwork of programs that comprises our safety net right now is not effective at helping. It does a great job and reduces poverty by half, but there are still millions of people that remain in poverty and that don't have the freedom to define their lives.
Conditional incomes require investment in systems and officials that look after distribution and control, thereby meaning that the structure ends up costing more than the total amount distributed by it.
We spend a lot of money on our current welfare system, which is not really working anymore. We spend more and more money every year, but people are getting less and less because a lot of money is lost within the process.
They often open the door to dishonest and corrupt practices, to confrontation between the most disadvantaged people, and to a climate of suspicion.
I realized that this structure is not going to bring out the best of a human being, because currently all the structure are based on we assume the worst. We assume people are evil. We assume people are untrustworthy. Even social welfare system is based on the mistrust.
Si yo, por ejemplo, recibo en un programa de rentas mínimas garantizadas una renta de 650 euros y consigo un trabajo de 200 euros, ese dinero que reciba del trabajo probablemente me sea descontado de la renta mínima garantizada si no se me va toda la renta mínima garantizada.
Bueno, pues este es el problema. Si es incompatible con otra fuente de renta, sí que tú tienes muchas veces la tentación de decir, bueno, si dejo el subsidio por este trabajo, pierdo el subsidio o pierdo gran parte del subsidio y resulta que a lo mejor este trabajo lo vuelvo a perder de aquí 2 meses. Entonces sí que hay una tentación de intentar hacer todo lo posible para seguir viviendo el subsidio y no encontrar otras fuentes de renta. Esto se le llama precisamente trampa a la pobreza.
Back in the 20th century in the USA, The liberal Milton Friedman came up with the idea of a negative taxation through which the government provides, through financial means, an extra income to those who are below a certain income level. However, within a context of extreme liberalism, this proposal simplifies the welfare state apparatus with a view to dismantling it.
Hay que tener mucho cuidado que esta renta básica no se financie en detrimento del estado de bienestar. Al fin y al cabo no es sino justicia social.
The idea that income or benefits should be conditional is also supported by the feeling that it's unfair that someone who doesn't want to work lives off the work of others.
I think the main challenge is the people's belief system. When we grew up, we were taught that you have to work to have money. Suddenly have somebody say, no, it is possible that we can pay each citizen a basic income unconditionally, so without having to work.
I think in the United States, they give a lot of value to work. The work ethic is very strong. The people who are on welfare are very looked down upon because they don't work. And in the United States, your statute is depending on what you do for work.
We shouldn't forget that work in the home, taking care of others, and voluntary work contribute to society but aren't remunerated.
Es decir, trabajo asalariado o trabajo con remuneración monetaria. Pero hay otros dos tipos de trabajo, que son el doméstico o de cuidado de los otros, como a veces se llama, y el trabajo voluntario. Estos tres tipos de trabajo, la gente sería mucho más libre para elegir qué proporción de los tres tipos de trabajo quiere hacer con una renta básica.
And of course, there are many jobs that aren't necessary. Many people consider their jobs to be pointless or absurd, and it even happens that the most highly paid jobs are those that move money from one place to another, but without producing anything for society.
Muchas ocupaciones que no tienen ningún tipo de utilidad social, es más, tienen desutilidad social. Muchos trabajos asalariados que se hacen actualmente es completamente absurdo.
In the US, a really interesting statistic I feel is that only 1/3 of the US right now of workers are engaged by the work that they do.
Furthermore, suspecting that if everyone were to receive an income, then they'd leave their jobs, contradicts any comparison with our own experience and with people who receive income for other reasons, such as pensions, rental income, etc.
Es decir, gente con mucho dinero quiere ganar más dinero de cualquier forma. Y resulta que gente solo con 650 euros al mes se conformaría con no hacer nada. Esto, como mínimo, es muy contraintuitivo.
The arguments against it, like it will make people lazy, it will lead to bad habits, have been disproved by our pilots and other evidence. People want to improve their lives. You may get one or two who become lazy because they get a basic income, but most people are not like that. Most people want to improve their lives.
Another very common criticism is that the universal basic income is impossible to finance. Although there are different ways of doing it, perhaps the means of direct taxation on income is the way that has been most developed in terms of numbers, as some economists have shown on the basis of real data.
Y nosotros lo que intentamos mediante una reforma del IRPF es ver cómo se podría financiar una renta básica igual al menos al umbral de la pobreza. Es decir, estamos hablando aproximadamente de 650 a 700 euros mensuales para toda la población. Lo que pretendíamos era precisamente esto, es decir, haciendo una reforma del IRPF a ver si se podía financiar. Y fue una sorpresa muy agradable ver no solamente que se podía financiar, sino que además resultaba de una redistribución de la renta igualitaria impresionante.
Mediante impuestos. El sistema fiscal es el mecanismo fundamental que hace que la desigualdad aumente o disminuya. Con un sistema fiscal progresivo, el porcentaje de impuestos que una persona debe pagar crece a medida que su riqueza se incrementa. Una renta básica así financiada produce una gran redistribución de la renta de los más ricos al resto de la población. Sí, los ricos como ciudadanos también cobran la renta básica, pero para que pueda ser financiada, pagan más de lo que reciben.
possibility of implementing a universal basic income clashes with beliefs that put the value of labour and GDP growth as the only ways of achieving prosperity.
Esto ya no tiene sentido. No tiene sentido que tengamos que crecer a estos ritmos que estamos creciendo otra vez para que los pobres tengan que salir de la pobreza. Existen maneras redistributivas mucho más eficientes para conseguir esto sin tener que crecer y cargarnos el planeta, ¿no?
Employment as a value for many people fulfills a role that goes far beyond the purely economic. Employment gives us a function and a place in society, so much so that many times we define ourselves according to our profession.
For the longest time, we've been thinking about work as work that you do in exchange for money. And I don't think that's true at all. I don't think that's the best work. I think if you're going to look at what's the best work that's going on in the world, I think it's the work that people are doing for free. It's the work that people are doing because they're passionate about it.
Se disociaría literalmente lo que es trabajo de empleo. Empleo es una actividad que uno hace a cambio de la cual es remunerado. Si no hace falta que uno obligatoriamente genere una actividad para tener derecho a sobrevivir, entonces puede empezar a realizar cosas para las cuales uno tenga mayor vocación y que puedan aportar más a la humanidad.
Estaríamos cuestionando el empleo como fuente de subsistencia. Si no hay trabajo remunerado para todas las personas, hay dos opciones, o repartirlo, o la otra opción es romper esa relación que existe hoy en día entre el poder vivir, entre el poder comer, entre el poder tener calefacción en invierno y tener que trabajar remuneradamente.
Hasta este momento, históricamente, se necesitaba que todas las personas produjeran algo y a cambio se les daba el derecho a la subsistencia. Hoy por hoy, con el desarrollo tecnológico, cada vez va a ser menos necesaria la mano de obra. Sin embargo, la riqueza que se produce es mucho mayor. Entonces, uno de los cambios fundamentales sería que las personas no se valorarían a sí mismas en la medida de lo que producen.
Today, the conditions exist for every human being as a result of having been born to be assured that their vital needs are covered. But the question is if this right is just an aspiration or can be turned into reality.
Basic income is no different to me than other rights we grant unconditionally, healthcare, education, and in general the welfare, the universal welfare state. So for me, basic income is just an element, a natural progression of the commitment to universal welfare. It's the one thing that we failed to do in the post-war, when we set up the post-war welfare state, is to give a guaranteed right to subsistence.
It's not a matter of whether or not there are sufficient resources. We're at a crossroads in which we'll have to decide if we're going to put everyone's interests as a priority over the interests of a minority that has appropriated the whole of society.
La capacidad de los más ricos de controlar gobiernos y mercados nos ha llevado a unos niveles de desigualdad social nunca antes alcanzados. Esta es la actual distribución de la riqueza en el mundo, donde el 1% más rico tiene tanto patrimonio como todo el resto junto. Este modelo económico y político es insostenible. Necesitamos otro camino.
In this sense, the biggest economic powers limit democracy inasmuch as they subject societies and institutions to a system of extortion, threatening withdrawal of their investments, their financing, or with taking their business activities elsewhere if the conditions aren't adapted to their interests. If economic progress is concentrated in fewer and fewer hands, this will lead us to the system's collapse. The other option is to open ourselves to the needs of everyone.
Si hay determinados niveles de desigualdad, como actualmente, la capacidad que tienen las grandes transnacionales, por ejemplo, o los ultra ricos para modificar las condiciones de existencia material de la inmensa mayoría de la población, afecta a esta libertad.
Universal basic income will put an end to poverty from the moment it's applied. To have a secure economic foundation avoids fear and tension due to economic uncertainty, which is furthermore a cause of illness and conflict, in addition to reducing our capacity.
It could be a tool to actually eradicate poverty, hopefully worldwide one day. Health reasons, psychological reasons, emotional reasons, that I deeply believe that if we would secure every person's life and give them enough money to have food, water and shelter, that all of us would evolve in dramatic ways positively and fulfill our potentials in ways that are probably not even possible at the moment.
Que la renta básica puede ser una transformación, ¿no? Puede ayudar a una transformación del modelo productivo y del modelo social, aparte de conseguir eliminar la pobreza desde el minuto cero, ¿no? Lo cual ya solo por esto ya vale la pena, ¿no?
Según la OMS, en 2020, los trastornos de ansiedad y depresión serán la primera causa de enfermedad en el llamado mundo desarrollado.
El 80% de las enfermedades mentales son depresiones y situaciones de angustia, y más del 70% de estas depresiones provienen de las carencias económicas.
It is very difficult to make any plans for your life when, for instance, you don't know where your next meal is coming from or where your next paycheck is coming from, if you're going to be able to pay the rent and all this kind of thing. So if people want to have a vision for their life for the next 5 years, what am I going to achieve? If you don't have a basic security, you can't do that. And there are a lot of people in that situation.
So in other words, no one feels secure in the world. No one, regardless of where your country you're from. So how about we make universal basic income become a global movement? That's what I want to say, global movement. We work together. Make basic income become like a universal basic income, universal worldwide basic income.
They can spend more beautiful time with family. They can choose more humanity job. Yeah, this is my movie story and our wish.
It would alleviate injustice exercised overwhelmingly on women, who until now have not been remunerated for their housework and for looking after others.
Las personas que trabajen en sus casas sin recibir ningún dinero por ello tendrán la posibilidad de liberarse de la dependencia material de sus parejas. Y las personas dependientes que requieren asistencia tendrán recursos para pensar su vida con libertad. En general, la renta básica nos permite llevar vidas más nuestras.
And women too. Women get paid less, and they're in more. It's much more difficult for a woman to become independent and make decisions. So, for instance, if you want to get a divorce or something, it's much more difficult for a woman than a man.
Y sin autonomía económica, desde luego, hablar de libertad, pues para mí no es sino una falsedad. Y por eso, para lograr una libertad real y efectiva en la ciudadanía y en todas las personas, lo que necesitaríamos sería que tuviéramos todos y todas la existencia material garantizada.
Para tener el verdadero derecho a trabajar con dignidad, hace falta poder elegir. Los contratos de trabajo no se firman en igualdad de condiciones cuando a una de las partes, necesitada de recursos, no le queda otra que aceptar ese contrato. En cambio, la renta básica nos capacita para elegir empleos más dignos que se adapten mejor a lo que somos. También nos abre oportunidades para tirar adelante nuestros propios proyectos.
Una renta básica es muy factible que también se dé con una reducción de jornada. Y hay mucha gente que recibiría una renta básica y que pasaría, por ejemplo, de tiempo completo a tiempo parcial.
In the current system, you lose the contributions of people who are drowning in poverty or chained to an absurd job. We aren't taking advantage of most of the population. Energy released by a universal basic income could be invested in improvements for our immediate and social environment.
Labour is what you do for a boss in a job, reporting to a manager, okay? It's necessary, but don't idealize it. It's not what most of us want to do. But we also want to work on our enthusiasms. We want to work on our creativity. We want to work in caring for us, our families, our communities.
En general, la renta básica nos permite llevar vidas más nuestras, donde quepan el ocio, los cuidados, el trabajo voluntario u otras actividades que no sean impuestas por la necesidad y el miedo.
y eso sería una revolución social, porque las personas empezarían a detectar su vocación y a moverse en el mundo en cuanto a lo que quieren aportar, no en cuanto a lo que puedan ganar a cambio de sus actividades.
I don't know what 300 million people will be doing with their basic income, but I know that they know what they would be doing. And I guarantee you that there's a lot of people out there with a lot of great ideas, that there's a lot of passionate work that people want to do, a lot of meaningful work that they are currently prevented from doing.
The universal basic income is a right to exist, to live, which derives from the fact that you were born. The situation of need of other human beings thereby creates a right, and not dealing with this generates personal and social contradiction. Human rights are advancing, and when some are achieved, others appear on the horizon of our aspirations.
The truth for basic income behind is satisfy. It satisfies all the human basic needs.
It needed something that was inspiration for the future, something sufficiently radically different. And it offered a sort of mobilizing utopia for the future.
It's a dignified cause that has meaning. The basis of social transformation is the struggle against pain and suffering in ourselves and in others. This is experienced as personal coherence and internal unity. In order for things to change, we need a representation of the future we aspire to and which we believe is possible.
La reivindicación de que el ser humano es constructor y no solamente paciente de las circunstancias que le rodean, y además aquello de nada por encima del ser humano y ningún ser humano por debajo de otro ser humano.
Among the millions of people punished by successive crises is emerging a new sensibility that seeks real and profound changes of the economic system now.
The precariat is the growing mass class consisting of millions of people who are facing a life of insecurity, not feeling that they're going anywhere in their lives, they're developing themselves, are looking for a new form of politics, and basic income is seen as part of that new politics.
So that's how it is in the US as well, where the US started to consider it more because of Switzerland, because of Finland experiments, because of Canada talking about it. And so as it gets more popular in one country, then that can actually help grow this momentum around the world in other countries.
I want to rescue the poverty. That is my wish. But if we want to change real in this world, we want to change money system. Basic income is good action to change this money system.
But if there's one thing we can fix relatively easily, and that will make a common fate of individuals who feel, I think, lost in the global transaction economy, be it as a woman, a mother, or for other reasons, it is this thing. It is basic income.
Without a universal basic income, there are no equal opportunities, nor is there real freedom for everyone. The universal basic income counters the cruelest effects of economic violence. A basic income makes us the masters of our own lives. A universal basic income shows us that our community takes care of our well-being and that of our loved ones. It's a utopia which is already close and a driver towards the humanization of our society.
Y sería que todas las personas tuviéramos un suelo sobre el que poder edificar nuestras vidas, dotar de libertad a las personas, que las personas puedan hacer lo que realmente quieran con su vida.
In many ways, there's a dark tunnel we are in, with the financial crisis still going on, the austerity period, and so on. This is misleading us, and I think we must realize that, in fact, we can. The old is dying and the new is yet to be born. Are people who share the same values, people who share the same hopes. And I know that I can go to numerous countries, many countries now, and meet friends who are on the same journey. And you don't give up when you're in that journey.